Switzerland and China. And that I think is amazing. Two technically good friends of the U.S. And we are going in a big way. We are going after them. When I say we, I'm talking obviously the administration. The administration is quite strong right now. I mean, it's not messing around. I have to tell you that much. And I want to see what the end result is going to be. We shall see. We shall see. But whatever that is that they're doing, I will tell you this: it is major. It is major. Let me explain to you what's going on and what it really means in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so what they're doing right now, literally, the administration, U.S. administration, is going after two of its quote unquote best friends, right? So it's saying, "You're my friend, you are my friend," and I wanna emphasize exactly what that really means, right? Maybe there's a good reason for it. Maybe they know what they're doing. Maybe there is a purpose. So let's talk about first of all Switzerland, because I think that's important for you to understand what is going on with Switzerland. So essentially, what has happened is Trump Trump has basically tagged 39% on Switzerland, and it's a standoff that shows even strong allies as vulnerable to sudden shift in U.S. policy. Now, obviously, I don't want to just tell you the news because you probably have heard it, but let me just sum it up, and then I'll explain to you what does it really mean in the grand scheme of things, and why this is a big deal. Why this is a big deal? Because, quite frankly, what you're going to notice is that the U.S. is doing some pretty fancy footwork. And why? That's a question you need to ask yourself. Why we had to do it? Yes. Bizmatch says we had to do it. You know, it's like the bad medicine. It hurts, but you have to do it. Well, and this is really, at the end of the day, what this channel is about, is we're trying to figure out, you know, what is the impact of this, and more importantly, you know, what does it mean for you, and ultimately, what's going to do, right? So Trump lost his mind, says Samir. Thanks, Elsa. Well, let's find out exactly what's going on, right? Because the strategy here is to figure out all of the risks, all of the issues that we are having, right, in the U.S. and now, frankly, the world. And why is this all happening? Now, of course, I know it was just an easy thing to say, well, I don't understand what's happening, so let's just blame someone. And frankly, that's a possibility. You know, maybe the U.S. administration is out of control. Maybe the U.S. administration don't know what they're doing. Maybe they need to be reined in. And frankly, no one is able to rein in because, frankly, there's no one else there. Where are the Democrats? Okay, so now you're left just basically with a strong figurehead that wants to do what he wants to do. And let's find out the facts, and then you decide if it makes sense or not. Now, I will tell you that overall, from a big picture type of situation, you need to realize, and these are facts. Now, you make of them what you wish, but these are facts. First of all, you need to understand that the clock is ticking for the USA. What I mean by that, in terms of industrial manufacturing, the U.S. Global manufacturing has declined from 30% to 16% from 2000. Obviously, the way this comes about is basically they're taking advantage of us. Okay, that's probably for public consumption. They're taking advantage of us. Are they really taking advantage of us? Well, I mean, the point is, you're losing ground. The U.S. The U.S. Michael says the U.S. will always be on top. I hope so, right? But right now, believe it or not, it depends what we mean on top. But right now, in terms of pharmaceutical, the U.S. relies heavily on foreign production for 90 to 95% of your pharmaceutical ingredient, especially China. So that's a fact. And in terms of industrial manufacturing, well, you're losing ground. Okay. So what does that have to do with Switzerland and India and what Trump is doing or the administration is doing? Well, essentially, I mean, Switzerland of all countries, but maybe there's something happening that you need to understand. So basically, what has happened is Switzerland was tagged something like 30, well, not just like, actually 39%. 39% tariffs on Switzerland. First of all, it's Switzerland. I mean, I don't know, you've probably never been there. No one cares to go there. But at the end of the day, what we're looking for is 39%. What the heck is 39%? Right? How significant is this 39%? Well, first of all, it's a high number. But more importantly, what it means, if you look at the tariffs very closely, you will note that Switzerland, it's a huge number for Switzerland because, let's put it this way. First of all, it's construed as an extraordinary tariff on a trusted partner. Switzerland was long, and everybody knows about Switzerland, but has long been viewed as a neutral and stable economic partner. And it's now facing, and this is why it's significant, the highest tariff imposed by the U.S. to anyone, 39%. So they're sitting there and they are saying, Virginia says Switzerland gets all of the crooks of the world bottom game. I mean, they have a reputation, but the point is they're getting hit with the highest of all the 39% affecting key industries. So obviously, when we think Switzerland, we're talking about watches, machinery, chocolate, and of course, pharmaceutical. And to make matters worse, you have to understand that the U.S. is a vital market. About 1/6 of the Swiss exports come over here from timepieces, watches, and pharmaceutical items. So, if this happened, their GDP is going to shrink by 0.3 to 0.8%. And they're going to lose a lot of jobs, right? In what you call a sentiment-driven industries. It's also weakening market confidence. It's eroding political capital and trade trust. What the heck are you all doing? What the heck are you doing? And it's reassessing Swiss neutrality and global positioning. The shock of the tariffs has stoked internal debate about future direction. Business circles are renewing calls for a free trade agreement with the U.S. Diplomatically, Switzerland was blindsided. They said, well, how did that happen? Right? How did that happen? Well, maybe they took Trump for granted. Maybe they thought that they'd be safe. I mean, Europe got 15%. And there's no more taco trade here, people. This is all over. This is for real. This is really happening. Why? Because, and that's the question, isn't it? Why is this happening? Well, this is happening. It depends your view, but I will tell you right now, the U.S. is in a decline. That's one main theme. And that's happening, as we'll discuss a little bit later on. And also what's happening, and this is part of the India situation, although this is not really the Switzerland situation, but we'll talk about India in a few minutes. But basically what's happening is we are having an issue with Switzerland that is now getting away, or not any longer, but basically what Trump is trying to do is probably looking to keep certain countries together. What I mean by that, he's got two issues he's got to face with, major issues, and he translated it into, make America great again, and they're taking advantage of us. And but what it means, and this is what you need this channel for. And I want you to join this channel so I could explain to you, or at least we could discuss issues, so we go beyond just the news. Basically, what you have is you've got the U.S. losing ground, quote unquote, or taking advantage of, and you've got China, and you've got Russia, and potentially India starting to play together on their own without the U.S., and that's a problem. And you have to understand that at certain level of power, these are the things that they're worried about, because they say, listen, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. We're declining and declining and declining. When Trump will release those files, Marcus, we'll talk about that. Those files are going to be released, and she's probably going to get. They're going to free her up. You'll see. Trump is going to give her like PDD. He's going to let her go. But basically, let's go back to this point. So what you have really is you have a situation where you really should be concerned about the fact that these people are together. Now, how does Switzerland fits in there? Well, Switzerland fits in there because at the end of the day, there's a huge trade deficit with Switzerland, and that needs to be fixed. And frankly, Trump wants to show that he's serious, and frankly, he wants the money. So what happened is yesterday, the Swiss president headed for the U.S. in a last-ditch effort to head off punishing tariffs. Now, you will notice here there's two type of people he's dealing with. He's dealing with the Chinese, the Russian, and the Indians. They're not rushing here to talk to him with a hand like that. They're not doing that. Then you have the others. You have the Europeans. You have Mexico. You have Switzerland. I say, well, what the heck are you doing? I thought we was friend, that we were friends. No. This is serious. Now, the thing that you have to decide on your own is, what's the point? You're upsetting the children, literally. You are upsetting the children by doing everything that you're doing right now. Is that the idea? Does it make sense to do it? Because you're going to pay a price. You know that, right? You're going to traumatize the children. Switzerland applies tariff over high on imported agricultural goods, particularly those that compete with domestic production. Really? I thought that Switzerland was actually remove all tariffs on the U.S. And that's why they don't understand. But let's double check on that. So the tariff represents a test for the export model as an example of how vulnerable even staunch U.S. allies are to abrupt shift in U.S. policy in the era of transactional deficit-focused negotiation under Trump. So she was totally, that her name is Calasona, completely taken by surprise. So her and the economic minister aim to present a more attractive offer. And this comes the other strategy that you need to understand that the U.S. is doing. So not only they want the tariffs, but also at the end of the day, they do know that the tariffs, Switzerland is not going to pay for the tariffs. China is not paying for the tariffs, right? India is not paying for the tariffs themselves. What it is, it gets brought over, and then as soon as it crosses the border, whoever brings it in, that they pay the tariffs. Usually, maybe it could be a foreign company, but it could be a U.S. company as well. In fact, I was telling you before that GM is paying a tremendous amount of money right now. The tariffs are getting hit for, and I'm going to do a live on that to explain to you what's going on at this level, but they're paying big time. But one thing is happening, it is not being passed to the consumer. It's not being passed to you. So yes, Bismarck is right. Prices haven't gone up yet, and that is true. And the reason why they haven't gone up is because they say, what are you passing? Are you passing 25%? Are you passing 15%? Are you passing nothing? It's confusing. We need some sort of understanding, which we're not getting. Okay, so now the question is, how does it get passed to the consumer? You, essentially. Well, we'll see. We shall see. But right now, what's happening is essentially the Trump administration is fighting on two fronts. It's trying to revitalize the economy. So with Switzerland, what they're doing is say, okay, you know what? I don't want to talk to you. In fact, she came to the U.S. yesterday, and Trump did not receive her. How embarrassing. Okay. He wasn't there. He was not there. There was no meeting with Trump. And instead, she spoke to Marco Rubio. She was seeking relief from that 39%, and she did not get it. She was able to secure a meeting with the U.S., but you don't just decide to go to the U.S. Hey, I want to talk to Trump. It doesn't work that way. And now, of course, he's in a position of power, so he's not going to. So she did not meet with President Trump. The Swiss delegation left Washington without any concessions. They rejected their proposal for a lower rate. Trump doesn't just want lower rates. I mean, what he wants investments. And there comes the issue that we're having, is that they all realize. In fact, we'll do another live on that. But as I explained to you before, the $550 billion that Japan gave the U.S., the four or five, I think he wants another $100 to $400 billion from Apple, but I haven't looked into the deal. The $600 billion that he got from Europe, what he got, it's not, he didn't get a suitcase full of cash and they're coming to the U.S. and buying. That's not what they got. What they got is a deal, although it needs to be signed, and that's the issue. They basically got a commitment. I mean, Europe cannot spend $250 billion to buy oil and gas from the U.S. because they don't need that much to begin with. And the $600 billion that Europe said that they were going to give, quote unquote, the U.S., it was based on commitments from private companies. And technically, van der Leyen cannot commit the money of private companies, so that needs to be discussed and further agreed upon. But the point, Trump is going around saying, hey, we got $1.3 billion, $1.3 trillion from Europe, so therefore I gave him 15%. So that's the issue that we're having right now. And it's a big issue because by hitting Switzerland the way you are, you're upsetting the children and you're frankly making a friend, right? A foe? A scary cat? I don't know. But the 39% duty, effective immediately, is expected to deeply affect Swiss industries like watchmaking, chocolate industry. Don't forget, everything is 40% more. If you want to buy a gold Rolex, $45,000, that's going to cost you 39% more, risking job losses and economic slowdown. Companies and public officials are expressing frustration with domestic critics, pointing to strategic missteps. Say, what were you doing? And calling for new diplomatic tactics to address aggressive tariff escalation. They realize that Trump is serious. This is serious business. And frankly, you gain Switzerland, you lose Switzerland. I don't know if that's a big deal for the U.S., but keep in mind that hidden underneath this discussion is the fact that there's a huge amount of business being done out of Switzerland to the U.S. The U.S. is a pretty large exporter of pharmaceutical item. And this is where I want you to understand what's really going on underneath, right? What is he doing? The things that he's doing, it doesn't make any sense. No, well, I mean, if you look at it from his point of view, it makes total sense. First of all, Switzerland is exporting a lot of pharmaceutical product. Now, there's a big topic on the pharmaceutical products right now because, the U.S. doesn't import enough, doesn't make it. In fact, he's looking to target 100 to 200% on pharmaceutical product pretty soon. And he went to the companies in the U.S. and said, you got to lower your prices. So not only I want you to make it here, but I want you to lower your prices. Remember what I said to you. Okay? The clock is ticking. U.S. pharmaceutical sector. The U.S. leads in R&D and biotech innovation. Very nice. Pfizer, Amgen, and all that. But it relies heavily on foreign production. Elsa says Trump doesn't play. He's 100% business. He doesn't play. He can't play too long because, you're losing the house. 90 to 95% of active pharmaceutical ingredients are made overseas. Many generic drugs, India and China, dominate this supply chain. And supply chain is a key word because if for whatever reason this supply chain gets cut, you're in big trouble. Well, but no, I mean, we've been doing this for years. That wasn't a problem before. Well, it wasn't. While the U.S. was slowly losing the race and slowly forgetting how to make medicine, semiconductors. It happens very slowly, but it's happening. Do you realize that within the 5 to 7 years, semiconductors might become the way of the past in the U.S. Years to critical loss is 5 to 7. You got to do something. EV component, 3 to 5 years. Generics, 3 to 5 years. And the competition, we're talking China, India, Taiwan, China, and maybe some European countries. Biotech still strong, maybe another 10 years. But you need to continue R&D. So the idea is we need to do something. There are very high tariffs on all kind of things. Hold on. Okay. Gab, let's see what's going on here because now I want to know. I thought that how much tariffs does Switzerland levies on the U.S.? I thought she said, if she's going to Washington and giving heavy tariffs and asking for 15%, no wonder she got kicked out. No. Switzerland has eliminated tariffs on industrial products entering the countries. As of 2024, these imports, including those from the U.S., are duty-free, following a law change that abolished industrial tariff. No, that's what I thought. While industrial tariffs are exempt products, Switzerland continues to maintain, here we go. Significant tariffs and subsidies on agricultural imports, such as cheese, meats, and food product. Okay. Well, we're both right. Right. Switzerland is an extremely open market for U.S. industrial goods, placing it among the most tariff-friendly. But by contrast, agricultural imports remain protected to safeguard the domestic producers. And that's probably Trump was saying, you know what? I'm waiting for Indian pharma tariffs, says Shikha Singh. Yeah. So so basically, and that's probably Trump saying, leave me alone, okay? I want you want to make your cheese. I want to import. What about agriculture? And that's what Trump is trying to do with India, right? He's trying to export a lot of the rice and a lot of things, a lot of the wheat. But obviously, India is basically saying, no. I want to protect my own farmers. And I guess Switzerland is doing the same thing with its agricultural product, and it's saying, no, we have tariff. Everything else is free. You could bring your watch, you could bring everything you want over. But not agricultural. So they have significant tariffs and subsidy. How bad are the tariffs? How high are those tariffs? Well, it looks like it's an issue. When we say significant, we mean, okay, 27%. The average tariff is around 27%. So, Trish says that Trump is the greatest man alive. Okay, this is not a show about Trump. This is a show for you to try to understand what's going on. I mean, if in the process you realize he's great, I mean, that's fantastic for you. But I mean, I just want to make sure that we trying to stay in the middle of this thing, because at the same time we could understand what he's trying to do, and it looks like he's really doing, he's going after Switzerland in a very big kind of way. We have to be careful, because is this the right way of doing it? Or is this going to be very impactful to the U.S. Going forward? And what I mean by that is, keep in mind that you need to understand that he's eroding political capital and trade trust. Okay, fine. You could push. And I could see the discussion. I could see the thinking. He's saying, listen, you're being charged like 29% for tariffs for me to send cheese in Switzerland, which means it's not going to happen. And everything else is open. What else can I? And meanwhile, you are 1.6, you are 1/6 of your exports come to the U.S. So you're going to hurt a lot more than I will. And I guess this is what he meant by the U.S. is being taken advantage of, and it's going to stop. But is this the right way of doing it? Well, how much time do we have? How much time does the U.S. have, right? Because remember, the last time you had the U.S. actually did a trade agreement with Canada and Mexico, it took 2 years, 2.5 years. There's no time. Trump is running out of time. The U.S. might be running out of time. And be careful. And I'll talk about that with the Chinese situation. But right now, they've been doing some interesting movements in the Pacific that you might, and of course we're going to say, well, we're not going to talk about a war, are we? Well, I'm not saying there's a war going on, but there's a lot of movements. China has 2 huge fleet that, quite frankly, could do a lot of damage if that came to it. Not that they are doing it; they're just moving those ships around the Pacific, and they're stretching. They're going way beyond where they usually go. That's and we'll talk about that later on. But they're flexing their muscles down there a little bit without invading, but they're going further and further. There's certain lines that they usually never did before, but now they're doing it, and we'll see what it means. But you will notice, like I said before, there's the way you talk to the Swiss and the way you talk to the Chinese are 2 different things. And frankly, good luck with your medication, people. And basically, you're potentially losing that directive. That you're talking to Switzerland in one way. In fact, you're not even talking to them. That's one group. And then, of course, the Chinese and the Indians and the Russian. You're talking to them, but they're not listening. And that's a sign. This is where I want you to realize that there's a sign. There's something going on here. Otherwise, they would be replying. They would be visiting. Now, supposedly, now there's a meeting. These are going to be, you're going to listen to these videos later on, and you realize, oh, my God, this was happening all along. This was developing. It was in front of us. And this is why I want you to really grasp what's really going on beyond the rhetoric. Trump is a bully. China this, India that. No, 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 no. You need to realize, because I will tell you one thing. If he's not able to keep all these things together, because right now Trump's got lots of balls in the air, right? He's got the economy that needs handling, and right now the economy is doing great, so I'm not too concerned about that. We're looking at the stock market. Stock market is doing just fine. Thank you very much. But be careful. It's doing well because it assumes that we're going to have rate cuts, and it assumes that we're not going to be in a recession. Although, if you look at the latest numbers, you will see that employment, I think we added 73,000 in July, new job. That's not a lot. Be careful. Now, of course, you're also losing a lot of people in the U.S. that are looking for a job because of the immigration situation. I think 2.6 million came in, 2.6 million native born, and 1.6 left. So non-native born. So you're basically up 1 million. So I mean, the pool of people looking for job is shrinking. So, and that's why you have to be careful. So, because if you look at 73,000, you say, oh, we're going into recession. So therefore, they're going to have to lower rates. Well, hold on, take it easy, okay? First of all, we don't even know what the real number is because of what happened with the situation. And at the same time, we are not so sure that the unemployment rate is 4%. So calm down, people. We're not having a recession on our hands. But obviously, there's something happening. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, because this channel is about the black swan. And what is a black swan? Black swan is a mythical creature that we never see, which is a risk that we never see. It's actually after a book called The Black Swan, literally. And I like that book because essentially what it did, it shows you that you need to be aware of what you do not know. It may be in front of you. You may not realize it. Right? What's in front of you right now? Well, the U.S. is going down. China, India are getting together. Trump is trying to talk to them. It's not working. Maybe he's going it the wrong way. China is doing its thing over there with Taiwan. I mean, they haven't invaded Taiwan, but be careful, by the way, regarding Taiwan. They have a show right now in Taiwan about a potential invasion by China. And in fact, if you think that Switzerland has it bad, keep in mind that Trump went to the president of Taiwan wanted to visit the U.S. and Trump said, no, don't come. I'm talking to the Chinese right now. And in fact, you gave me $100 billion. I am looking more like $400 billion. People, I am serious. I need investments. No promises of opening factories, because I think the U.S. administration realizes it's going to take too long. But in the process, they're upsetting the children quite a bit. And what that's going to be, outstanding, keep it up. President Trump, hundreds of billions already in a couple of months. Keep it going. Bobby G. Gob, do you think China has a bright future? Well, I will tell you that China is in trouble, actually. And the reason, and this is the reason why they're talking to the U.S. right now, that's the only reason, is because they have a huge amount of deflation. Because the way they run the government is, and that's what they do with the robots right now. They're creating about 72 companies on top of I think they're up to 258 creation of companies that creates robots. So what they do is they basically put money after a project. So people go out and borrow the money, right? And then they give money for the people to buy the products. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a little bit perverse situation where you're feeding both sides and you hope that, but now they realize that it's too much, right? We have too much stuff. We don't know what to do with it. In fact, there was a recent article about the fact that China exports keep defying expectation with accelerating growth in July. the export grew at a faster part in July, surpassing expectation. And that is a problem. The Chinese competition has led to job losses in Eurozone manufacturing. But basically deflation, they had 33 months of that. So basically what they do is they sell the stuff at a very cheap way, right? And it's sponsored by the government. And you need to move this thing around. So you're selling. And that's why they say to the U.S., hey, you got to buy my stuff. And Trump says, whoa, hold on. I'm not, no, not anymore. Because what's happening is we're forgetting how to make these things. And all you're doing is you're using us, literally. And that's not going to happen. What I want from you, I want the rare earth mineral because I forgot how to make those. And China says, no, I'm not going to give you rare earth mineral because you're going to use it in your weapons and you're going to use it against me. I mean, they're not saying that literally, but that's kind of the discussion. And that's why, as you're seeing, they're going back and forth, and there's discussion, but it's being delayed. There's something cooking there, and you have to be very careful because this could end up many ways, and it could end up in a very bad way. Because at any moment in time, if the discussions don't go well, all China needs to do is send a plane, and this is exactly what the idea of that TV show in Taiwan is. Send a plane over Taiwan and have it crash in Taiwan and say, oh, sorry, we have two planes that just crashed. We're gonna go over to Taiwan to free up our people. So we'll bring a division with us to help. And then before you know it, they didn't invade. They just help out, and they're there. And then the U.S. is gonna have to do something, and then we're gonna realize who's got what. And unfortunately, the equipment that the U.S. has is not as good, and the ability to produce, right? What the U.S. has done strategically in terms of weapon, what they're doing is they're having lots of big things, right? But the B-52 bombers but what they don't have is the missiles and the ability to produce stuff in a mass quantity, which is exactly what China has. And at any moment in time, what they could do is they could say, you know what, stop making robots, let's start making missiles. And they're all going to make missiles. And then what are you going to do? And of course, the U.S. spent a lot of its missiles, and that was the idea. That was a translation that I had when Trump talked to Netanyahu. He said, whoa. Listen, you got to stop this war. I can't send you any more missiles. I spent too many missiles after you. America has missiles. I didn't say they don't have missiles, Vince. But the ability to produce them. The U.S. only has enough missiles for like a week for an extended war. That's because the U.S. has focused industrially, right? I'm just appalled by the short support of America by Americans. Well, Costider, it is the U.S. is at a cusp, and I hope that you realize that. Well, that 39% that Switzerland is paying is significant because the U.S. is, listen, I'm busy. I got things to do now. Yeah, I know. You're my friend, Switzerland. You never fought with anyone, but now I need to do something because we're in a situation. Of course, a lot of people will put that behavior to Trump's character and say that that's because, potentially, possibly, all the U.S. really has a situation. And that's why you need to know the facts. And that's why I come to you and explain to you what the facts are. And the facts are industrially wise, pharmaceutical wise. We got a problem. Not today, but over the next 5 to 7 years, it's going to be a problem. And you don't want to be the one that's over there, on his own. Nobody wants to trade with this country anymore. And in fact, they don't even want the dollars, right? So then all you're left with is asking and begging, you can have some pharmaceutical products? I need medicine. I don't have any. Because we forgot to do them, and you told us that you were going to keep buying it. But now that you don't want the dollar anymore, then we have nothing to trade with. And we don't know it. Be careful, right? This is a big picture type of things. Now, of course, You may say, why do I care about all these issues? Well, you care because ultimately, especially if you're in manufacturing, as you could see, that thing has been shrinking a lot. Now, of course, manufacturing is about 20% of the GDP of the US, and services is 80%. So, well, yes, as long as you trust others to make it for you and they want your money to pay for it, then you're okay. But the moment they stop, well, how do we know? Well, take a look at what's going on with again, you've got Switzerland coming and begging for some sort of deal, and you've got India. Let's talk about India. India's not budging. Trump went there and says, you've got to stop buying oil from Russia. And of course, everyone says, oh, the reason he's doing that is because he wants Russia to stop fighting with Ukraine. That's for public consumption. Yes, so that you could understand. But I want my subscribers to really understand. And what he really wants to do, he wants to stop. Can I be? A lot of throws against those trolls. Yeah, we'll take care of that. And what's happening is that's the issue, right? They're trying to, they're gonna stay together, and the U.S. is going to look at this and is going to say, what am I supposed to be doing? Well, you can't just sit there and let it happen. And with India, he says no. I mean, I want to. I need the oil from. Do you want me to? I get 1/3 of my oil from Russia at a discount, and you want me to stop doing essentially business, because that's what he's doing. He's trying to keep them apart. It's like you're in a schoolyard and a bunch of kids playing together, and you want to be part of the team, and you're trying to say, well, how come you all guys together, you're not playing with me? That's basically what Trump is doing here. And one way he's doing it, he's saying, well, then you're going to have to, deal with me, because India needs, right, the U.S. a lot more than it needs Russia, believe it or not, right? In terms of India's relationship with the U.S., Russia, and China, there's degrees of dependence varying significantly across the domains. And the domain that we have, for example, trade, India is highly dependent on trade with the U.S., highly dependent on technology, highly dependent on education and talent, sending all those Indian students to the U.S. It's dependent with Russia for defense and energy. So they need to choose. And Trump is saying, you need to choose now. Because and you'll notice, he's been trying to get to Russia and Putin, but it's not working. He's not listening to him. And I think supposedly they're going to have a discussion. And they make it look like it's tied to the Ukraine war, but it's more than that. It is much more important than that. It's the fact that he needs to pull them apart. And specifically, if he could pull them apart from China, at the end of the day, it's China that's the problem. I mean, the problem in the sense that it's dominance, right? Because China is growing, and then and I will do a live on can trade leads to war historically? Yes, right. A lot of things that has happened, from a trade perspective. The Japan need in the World War II to expand. What caused that? Well, there were things that have happened, and you kind of squeeze them economically, and they need to move, they need to expand, and they had no choice but to do it. So, and these are very, very complex issue because you don't, because first of all, it's complex to understand. There's many people involved and there's time and there's circumstances and unfortunately it will impact you. And this is what I want for this channel. And don't forget to subscribe. I want you to understand what's happening because at the end of the day, you need to realize that all of these things will have implication, huge implication. I mean, if you thought COVID was something. So basically, Trump is in front of Modi and saying, okay, well, I'm your friend, aren't I? You don't you rely more? I mean, you need the weapons, I understand, from Russia and the oil, but no, you're too close. In fact, the U.S. has increased tariff on Indian export to 50%. So the 25%, now an additional 25. And obviously, you don't deal with the Indians the same way you deal with the Swiss, right? Because it continues import of Russian oil. Analysts warn that this could trim India's GDP by up to 80 basis points. Now, you got to be careful, and this is where Trump's or the U.S. administration techniques or tactics might be a bit too strong because if you don't forget, the U.S. is 25% GDP of the entire world. A quarter of the money being made is made in the U.S. If you say, okay, I'm not giving it to you anymore, I'm keeping it for myself, well, then who's going to be buying it? You're going to starve the kids. That's not good either, right? But you're assuming, well, you want to eat, right? So you're going to do what I want you to do. I suppose they don't. So over the next year, if countermeasures are not implemented, India has pushed back strongly, calling the tariffs selected and unfair. So Modi is saying, no. I know they're saying that, but what they're saying basically to Trump, and they're saying to each other, which they're not telling you, is basically, no, we're together. We're part of BRICS, and you guys are unreliable. And if you were simple enough or too stupid to allow this to happen to you, I don't know, maybe we're the next, the end of the U.S. is coming. Who knows what they're thinking, right? But it feels to me that the guy's not replying and Trump is trying, and maybe he's trying too strong. The Reserve Bank of India kept its key rates at 5.5%, while the neutral policy stance avoid immediate market shocks. Expectation persists for further easing later in 2025. So Modi is to attend the SCO summit in China. That's right, August 31st to September 1st. Trump says a lot, but he has not given any country zero tariffs. No, he's not going to give them zero tariffs. Israeli Jason. He is going to use the tariffs because that's the only thing he can use right now, frankly. He's using the tariffs in order for them to coerce them, which is probably not the best thing to do, but he's using it to coerce them in order for them to invest in the U.S. I mean, move to the U.S., right? And unfortunately, he realizes that he doesn't have the time to wait for them to decide on the plan, bring the plan, build the plan. You say, you know what? Give me money. Give me commitments. And that's what you're hearing all these people going over there say, I'm promising 600 billion, 500 billion. But I will tell you that if you look at these deals in details, he's not giving much of anything. And that's the problem. He's not giving much of anything. And that's, you have to be very careful. So the idea, therefore, is, well, then what's the... It's not free trade, no. There's rising tension. So basically, India, Modi is going to visit China for the SCO summit in August 31st to September 1st, marking the first trip since 2019. That's the first time. I mean, I don't know, it's coincidence, I guess. I don't know. If I'm thinking that way, people that are advising him, Rubio and all these guys are saying, okay, He will also meet Japan's PM in Tokyo, and key topics: counterterrorism, energy, and regional tensions. Well, obviously, you're not going to go to China alone. You say, no, but it's part of a trip. So I'm visiting Japan as well. What's really going on here? Who is he visiting and for what purpose? And Putin plans to visit India at the end of 2025. I mean, all the pieces are there. The thing is how you prevent them from getting together. Rising tension with the U.S. over trade have delayed plans of a Quad leader meeting among the U.S., India, Australia, Japan. Modi remains reluctant to confirm dates now that ties are strained. So basically, Trump wanted to meet India, Australia, and Japan. I mean, this is kind of obvious. You see what he's doing? He's basically, okay. It's going to be the US, India, Australia, Japan. I know we are all the way across, but we want to be there with you. Please stay away from Russia and China. As a truck driver, I see a lot of Indian and stay 96% in. Jason, I'm not so sure what that means. But the point is that what's happening is he's trying. The question is he going about the right way? Oh, but you're upsetting India, and that's why now you're going to get them closer to the other guys. Okay, what am I supposed to do? Well, maybe do it in a much nicer way. Maybe you shouldn't accuse him, because literally, and that's probably the problem, is that Trump literally accused the Modi of taking the cheap oil and then selling it, to the open market. And that's a problem. And that's a problem because they're all trying to do the same thing. So the way you manage something like that is, from your side, is you need to be careful, because obviously this has an impact on the economy. Because if India gets into trouble economically, then they're going to blame the U.S. If China gets in trouble economically, they'll tell their people it's not our fault. It's Trump, right? Horrible person. Look what he's doing to us, and then they're going to be upset at Trump, at the U.S. basically, for betraying their trust and whatever. And then the Swiss are going to do the same thing, and then eventually what could happen is you could actually precipitate what you're trying to avoid. And you're trying to avoid to become irrelevant. The thing is, how do you manage a situation like that? Because you want them to invest here, and you're pressuring them. It's working on some of them, although I'll be very careful, because when I look at the deal with Japan and Europe, we really don't have a deal. I mean, yes, they're going to be paying more, but the deal that they've been making are not really investing cash in the U.S. Maybe this thing with maybe with Taiwan, because Taiwan wanted to invest 100. He says, no, I need 400. If I don't have $400 billion, I have nothing. And frankly, if I have nothing, then you have nothing. What do I mean by that? I mean that Taiwan gets invaded by China and Trump doesn't do anything. That's always a possibility. So you have to be extremely careful that this doesn't happen. And this is the issue that they're facing. Okay, so Switzerland, key developments, they're not meeting with Trump. In fact, they talk with Rubio instead. And the The Swiss President Karen Keller-Sutter traveled to Washington seeking relief to 39%. She did not get it. Then again, as someone mentioned, there's a huge amount of tariff on agricultural product from the U.S. to Switzerland. That's pretty high, around 29%. So they thought that, can I get 15% like the European? And maybe they didn't want to give too much money into the U.S. And on top of that, quite frankly, they are a big exporter of pharmaceutical products, which does not help Trump. And the reason it doesn't help Trump because basically the U.S. is trying to remove this dependency that they have on pharmaceutical product from overseas. So that's that's kind of a lot of damage right now, right? So, and what they're trying to do is she wants to meet with Trump, and then she didn't get to meet with him. She met with Marco Rubio, nice guy and all, but it's not the same thing. And those tariffs that Switzerland is going to get hit with, it's going to be huge. It's the 39%, which is basically the 50%, kind of like the 50% that India is going to get, is expected to deeply affect Swiss industries. Companies are expressing frustration with domestic critics, pointing to strategic missteps and calling for a new diplomatic tactic to address the aggressive tariff escalation. And that's a key word, escalation. This thing is escalating very, very fast. How is India taking advantage of the U.S.? Well, it unfortunately, you cannot bring everything down into simple terms, right? Why? It's complex. Because on one end, you know what's happening to your country. Another end, you want to bring the other to invest in your country, but you cannot make everyone, you cannot make India great again, and you cannot make America great again, and China great again, and Russia on their own. Right? It's not possible. Germany tried that, and look what happened. Right? You cannot do that. It's impossible. You got to trade with people, and this is the issue that has been brought in all the time with the way the U.S. is going about it. Is that, well, you're upsetting the cart, right? What you're doing, you're basically going after a very, very important staple of what's going on in the world. You're going after the staples, the main staples of the, tariffs, education. Right? You're going after some fundamental, the relationship that we had with others. Maybe you could look at it that the U.S. is desperate. We have to do something. Now, of course, the other side will tell you, no, it's not the U.S. is upset. It's that Trump doesn't know what the heck he's doing. Well, the point is, you could look at it both ways. You could say, well, the U.S. is going down. These people are getting together. Why do you think the U.S. wants? There is this recent situation where they want these countries to get together, right? India, for example. India is going to go and meet China on August 31st, and then Putin is supposed to meet China at the end of 2024. What do you think they're going to be talking about? I think deep down that I think Trump came in too soon. He upset the apple cart a little bit too soon. I think they were on their way to kind of decouple, at least definitely China. And then raising tension, U.S. trade. He wanted to have a quad leader meeting among the U.S., India, Australia, and Japan, but it's not happening. I mean, that's what he wanted to do at some point, because he wants to get there too. I mean, the U.S. needs to make sure, hey guys, don't forget us. we are here with you. And I don't think it's happening anymore because now Modi is upset. But you have to understand, these people don't get upset. Okay, they get upset for the news, so you sell papers, so it's easy for you to comprehend in human terms. But there is no. I mean, who said that countries don't have friends? They have relationships, right? Who said that? That's a very famous. Who said that countries don't have friends? There's no friends but who said that? This is something. So you need to look at it. Don't look at it so much that. Here we go. The quote is, and this is what you learn in this channel, obviously, and don't forget to subscribe, obviously, and like it. It's always good. The quote is, countries have no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interest. Is widely attributed to Lord Palmerston, who served as Prime Minister of the United States in the 19th century. That's because in the House of Commons, it says in 1848, he said, we have no eternal allies and we have no perpetual enemies. Our interests are eternal and perpetual. And those interests, it is our duty to follow. That is what I think you should get out of this. Meaning that I'm not friend with India. India is not upset at me because I'm going to give him 50%. No. We have interests. We have permanent interests. And if my interest aligns with the interest, then we're great. But don't make it personal. And I think what you usually see, potato chips are still laughing. Alexander Bochev. Alexander, yes, because I kept saying chips yesterday. And you see what you mean that we're losing ground because of potato chips? You don't make potato chips? No, because we're losing. Listen, there's a lot of things going on at the same time here. Give me a break. But basically, you have to look at it from in terms of interest. So various variations of this phrase have been used by Henry Kissinger, Charles de Gaulle, Winston Churchill. And it's a common guiding principle in diplomatic circles, especially during geopolitical shifts. And that's what's happening right now. Right? Because you've got the U.S. trade moves, you have the BRICS alliance, you have the Indo-Pacific realignments. Realism over emotion. Look at what we did to Japan, and now they are a solid ally. And Japan did what they did because of some trade, and I'll talk to you about that next couple of days. I've done some research on that, and this is obviously a concern now because this thing with the trade, you're shaking things a lot. You're pushing these people in ways that, right? You're pushing India strong, but then again, you're saying, listen, we have interests in common, don't we? I'm concerned you're doing something else that I'm not aware of. And you need us. Now, don't forget, the only thing really that that China needs from the U.S. is basically the consumer, at least for now. I mean, in great detail, but China relies on the United States for technological and financial needs. Well, advanced technology, well, they need semiconductor equipment still. They need high-end GPUs, quantum computing pods. Okay, fine. But global market access, they need the U.S. consumer market. China export more than $400 billion to the U.S., which is 15% of total export. You just cannot ignore 15%. Wall Street provides access to global financing. These are huge amount of money we're talking about. Still central for oil, raw material, and cross-border. 30% of China's import are soybeans, corn, Okay, but financial infrastructure, swift access, the dollar, the US Treasury, these are the things that are needed. That's what the US needs. But how much more of this can they take? Okay. Scientific and economic ties. Yeah, they need the U.S. for bottom cutting edge technology, agricultural inputs, and access to financial market and access to its consumer. That's what they want. But can you live without these things? Now, on the other end, what does U.S. needs from China? Well, 50% of printed circuit boards come from China. Smartphones, computer chips, not potato chips. Lithium battery, 80% of global capacity come from China. 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredient. Um, that's a lot. That's a tremendous amount. What else do we have? We are rare earth minerals, 70% to 80% of the U.S. supply. Rare earth elements, 90% of solar panels, 80% of graphite batteries. I mean, the U.S. needs China a lot more than the other way around. The only thing I'm telling you that China needs from the U.S., at least for now, is basically the U.S. consumer market for you to buy Chinese. But at some point, that will go away as well, right? Because at some point, the countries, India, Russia, all these countries that Trump is trying to go after will grow as well, and then they will not need the U.S. anymore. And that's the biggest concern. So you have to protect your interests. If you do not protect your interests, they will be taken away from you. No. No, what are you talking about? The U.S. is not gonna. The U.S. is not gonna. No, no, no. We might. We're not talking about necessarily a war here because nobody wins in a war. We're talking about becoming irrelevant, losing control, and that's happening very slowly. Now, what does Trump have to do with this whole thing? Well, I mean, he's coming in and he needs to do what he needs to do, and you realize what is needed here is pretty strong stuff, right? This thing with the tariffs that he's doing, technically speaking, not so sure if he has the right to do them. I mean, the tariffs is 3 or 4 laws that allow you, and I want my subscribers to be as knowledgeable as possible, but there's a couple of laws that allow you to do the things that you do. But frankly, it's not unlimited. He's not a king where he could decide to do whatever he wants, right? There's certain and basically those tariffs are tied actually to they're tied to certain laws. But it's the first time that using tariffs as a political or geopolitical tool shift the traditional tariff from being primary economic objectives to a broader strategy, and this is where people are having a problem with. Um, that never, that was never intended like that. It introduced an unpredictability, and that's what's happening. The world is like, what's going on? China, India is saying 50%. Are you kidding me? Are you serious? And of course, you could have retaliatory trade measures. People could retaliate. And you haven't seen that yet. And of course, be careful because the more of that you do, you're eroding the international cooperation and trade norms, geopolitical realignment. Now, of course, you say, well, it's easy for you to say, but I'm losing my country here. I got to do something. And they're not listening to me, right? And frankly, I need to make sure that there's a long-term game. While tariffs may aim to reshore manufacturing or protect strategic industry, the process is slow. It could take 2 to 4 years to build a new factory, and that's the reason why Trump is saying, "I don't have 4 years. I'm running out of time here." So what we're going to do is I'm going to cast Switzerland. You're going to get 39%. You come to me with a deal. You tell me what you want, right? And it's not. It's not. I'm not going to give you 50% like that. I am playing hardball right now, and this is kind of what he's doing. And I mean, of course, you could point to the fact that look, tariff revenue projected to be 300 billion in 2024, so that's good. In fact, he may give to the U.S. $600 a person as part of his tariff refund, and that could be interesting. But the thing is, you're playing, you're literally playing with fire, and you're also playing with emotion. Now, of course, was this ever done before? It's like you said, friends, countries don't have friends, they have interests. So if you make it more expensive to deal with the US, less people will be interested in dealing with the US. But why is he doing that, Israel, Jason? You don't understand the motivation behind it. Now, of course, you could take the easy road, and he's saying he doesn't know what he's doing, right? He's just out there for whatever. Yes, if you don't know anything else, if you look at it, the way it comes across, and yes, but keep in mind that if you look what's behind it, you're seeing China and India not answering his calls. You're seeing them going to get together soon. You're seeing that the industrial production in the U.S. is slowly dropping. So what are you saying? If you make it more expensive to deal with the U.S., less people will be interested in deal with you. Well, but there's a reason why he's using the tariffs the way he's using the tariffs. Right? The U.S. is using the tariffs because what else could you do? How can you force someone to do anything? You only have two choices, really, or three choices. You could negotiate, but that's going to take too long. I'm telling you, 3 or 5 years, 5 to 7 years, some of those items are going to be obsolete. You're not going to be able to produce enough chips. So you don't have time. Um, if you want to buy American goods only, there aren't enough good made in the USA. Well, that's because you forgot how to make them, and you don't want to pay a lot for them. Okay, but be careful. At some point, they won't need your dollar. The only reason you're able to buy all these things in the U.S. is because everybody wants a dollar. Once they have no need for the dollar, you're done. You are done. Okay, and then you don't know how to make anything, and then of course you don't have any money to give to anyone because nobody wants a dollar. Now we're not there yet, but now as this happened in the past, right? 19th century tariffs and national development. We have done this before. Well, for example, in post-Civil War in 1860 to 1890, high tariffs like the Morrill Tariff protected American industries and funded Reconstruction, aligning with the Republican Party vision of economic self-reliance. These tariffs also signaled U.S. ambition to rival European industrial powers. Don't forget, at one point, they were it. Germany, the Bismarck Tariff, 1879. He imposed tariffs to protect German agriculture and industry, unifying disparate states under a nationalistic economic policy while countering British and French influence. It was a move to strengthen Germany's position in Europe. That was in 1879. And of course, the one that Trump mentions all the time, which is the Smooth Only Tariff Act of 1930. This act raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods to protect U.S. industries during the Great Depression. It was intended to boost domestic employment. It provoked retaliatory tariffs from Canada, Europe, and others, deepening the global economic downturn and exacerbating geopolitical tensions. Right? Deepening the global economic downturn. Isn't it what's happening right now when India is saying, be careful, you're going to put me I'm going to lose a couple of basis points on my GDP. And Switzerland. And you are exacerbating geopolitical tension. You're upsetting the children. and trade volumes plummeted with U.S. exports falling from 5.2 billion to 1.7 billion. Then there was also the British imperial preference of 1932. I mean, post World War II, there was the Soviet bloc, U.S. tariff on the Soviet blocs from 1960 to 1980. The Chicken War in 1963. There was This was done the U.S.-Japan trade tension, the U.S. steel tariff in 2002, the U.S.-China trade war 2018 to 2020. The Trump imposed tariffs on 550 billion in Chinese goods to address trade deficits. Chinese retaliated with tariff on one. So you know what I mean? This is not the first time this has happened. So why is this different now? Why is it different now? Because he's not just going after the China; he's going after everyone. And everyone thought we were safe doing our thing, not paying anything, and the U.S. and everything else. No, but you got to protect your interests, and I think that's what the U.S. is doing now. Are they doing it the right way? Now, of course, at the end of the day, you could say, well, there's no need to protect anything. Let's have open border. There's a difference between targeted tariffs and across-the-board tariffs. Well, he's starting a trade war with the entire world. But why would he start a trade war with the entire world? That's a question. Maybe he doesn't mean to do it. Does he want to? Because it's not like you want the money from the tariffs, right? Because if I know that, now you know it. He knows that. The people know it. They all know it. That the tariffs are not paid by the countries on which the tariffs are being exercised against, right? Switzerland is not going to pay 39%. That woman there, the president, she's not paying 39%. Who's paying the 39%? It's the company that's going to be importing the good that's going to pay the 39%. Now, if it's a Swiss company based in the US, if it's a US company, and then, of course, what are they going to do with that 39%? Now, of course, the reason why Switzerland doesn't like it is because nobody's going to be buying. The US consumer pays the tariff. Well, at some point, unless the company says, well, 39%, I guess if you're selling a Rolex, people are willing to spend 40,000. Do they mind spending 60,000 for the same item? We don't mind. Okay. Well, then we don't we pass the tariffs on to you. But the thing is, as you're doing that, to make things even more complicated, what you're doing is that you're also increasing inflation. So inflation goes up. And that's one thing you do not want. You do not want inflation to go up a lot. And by raising all these prices, that's what you're doing. So it's a balancing act. I mean, we probably should eat and spend a little bit more time to think about the implication, because what's going to happen is as the tariffs are being passed to the consumer, of course, if it's 39%, there's nothing to pass, right? You're not going to sell an item that is 40% more. You're going to give the impression that your good is too expensive. And if it becomes too expensive, then nobody wants to buy any of what you have to sell, so you're not going to order it to begin with. And that's what happened with GM. GM said they took a hit of $1 billion recently so that they could take the cost in on themselves. That's what they did, right? Because they didn't want to pay for it. I mean, they didn't want the consumer to pay for it because they would say, well, GM cars are expensive. So they took the hit for the time being. But if it's 39%, maybe, watches and cheese or whatever, they may just say, listen, it's too expensive. I'm not passing on that to my consumer. I'm not going to increase the price by 39%. This is ridiculous. Nobody's going to buy it. So what I'm going to do, I will simply not order the product. And that's what they're concerned about. That's what that lady came to the U.S., the president, Switzerland, and basically said, you can't, you're killing me. Nobody's gonna, and right. So that's the concern, and obviously, is this a trade war? No, there is no trade war. No, because she's not gonna fight back, because then you're definitely losing it completely. Now, remember, at some point, Canada did that. He said, "Listen, if this is what you're going to do, then I'm going to get it on with you, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that." And what did Canada ended up doing? Thanks for pointing out that the tariff also make U.S. goods more expensive and less competitive with the rest of the world. The U.S. goods. Well, no, because the U.S. goods actually that you're going to export to Europe, for example, are actually cheaper, unless, of course, they retaliate. And Switzerland says, all the, I don't know, the cheese that you're bringing in, and some of the wine, well, not wine, but maybe some of the meat, or what do we export to? What does the U.S. export to Switzerland? I want it to be as informed as possible here. The U.S. shipped approximately 25 billion. Um, oh, what we export is mostly services as usual. 64 billion of services and 25 billion of goods. Um, Services, financial services, business services, intellectual property, goods, high tech, chemical, biotech. So basically, as long as and all this, I think is tax free, really, is tariffs free. The U.S. export 25 billions in goods in 2024. So I don't think there's tariffs on those things. There's no food or anything like that. So that's the reason. But that's the reason why you can't export, and that's probably what's upsetting the U.S. So what can we send you, some wheat or whatever? They don't want it. But the point is that she is not retaliating yet against those. And don't forget, because we keep talking about stuff and goods. The U.S. What the U.S. export mostly are services. In this case, 64 billion versus 25 billion of goods, and the stuff that services, we're talking about financial services, business services, intellectual property at our major contributor. But it's 25 billion. That's nothing. 64 billion. So the trade deficit, but even with that, the U.S. has a trade deficit with Switzerland of 38 billion. But I guess Trump is willing to say, you know what, I don't really need you. It's okay. It's okay if you, of course, if you retaliate against me, then it's not 50%. It's not 39. It's going to be 100% then. Then we're done. Then it's a trade war. But we're not there yet. And I don't think now they realize that they realize that, um, I have an online camera debate with someone. Well, I need to make sure I have a good debater, quite frankly, to make sure we understand, because I don't want it to become a battle, a for against Trump, because I'm trying to explain to you, this is a little bit more complicated than that. These are interests. These are people that are protecting interests. Now, of course, the way they're doing it, and of course, as usual, and this is where you need channels. That's why YouTube is so needed nowadays, and that's why there are more views than Netflix, for example, is because people want to hear what's really going on. Because when you listen to the news, unfortunately, when I say the news, right, it depends which side they're on. So obviously, if you want to hear great things about the U.S., and you go to this channel, and then they'll tell you all the great things that are happening, and they keep reassessing the fact. But why are they doing that? Right? They're doing that because they want you to listen. They want you to buy. They want you to, right? And then on the other hand, if you don't like it, you don't like the IS administration, you listen to that one, and they'll tell you all the bad things that are happening. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep, that's right. But then what about you? Because you need to know what's going to happen next. For example, and this is it's huge impact. Are we heading for a recession or not? Will those tariffs give us into a recession? Well, obviously, it's going to get you a recession. Why? Well, because look at the numbers that we've seen recently from employment. We had 73,000 added employees, jobs. And that's the lowest number. And in fact, the May number and the June numbers were also reduced by quite a bit. So it's just like, wow, this is a big thing. That's a big issue. We need to do something about that. So the point I'm trying to make is we need to know exactly what is going to happen. And there, I don't know, right? You could say that the immigration, inflation is at a high, year low, wages are up, stock market is record. What are the numbers? Yeah, I mean, who said that? Gob is right. The inflation is 2.5. I mean, come on, let's not guys. This is not inflation, okay? We're nibbling 2.5, 2.4, 2.3. Oh my God, it went up. This is nothing, right? The stock market is at a record high. That is true. It is true. The market is the highest. Now, having said that, I have to tell you that in terms of indices globally, if you look from year to date, the US is still lagging the rest of the world. Year to date. Year over year, um, it's catching up, but it's still behind Germany, it's behind Italy, it's behind Spain. Now, there's something going on here. The market, Israel says the market is not good. Well, the market is year to date, it's monthly. No, the monthly, again, Europe is doing better. Year to date, Europe is doing better. Year over year, and the reason why it's doing better, even though the market has been going up quite a bit, the reason it's doing much better, is because the U.S. took a huge crash at the beginning of the year because of those tariffs, and now we're just catching up. But still, these things are very expensive. The market is extremely expensive. The market cannot afford, and let's talk about the stock market a little bit, but the stock market cannot afford any major issue. And if you're squeezing India too much and you're squeezing Switzerland too much and they don't buy enough and they go into a recession, then there's nothing to sell to anyone. And if there's nothing to sell to anyone, we're in trouble. But even if that doesn't happen, the next thing is, well, and assuming the numbers that we're seeing are correct, and listen to my video yesterday, but talking about what happened with the Bureau of Labor Statistics number that were incorrect. Why? Well, they're incorrect because it's a big job. She made a big mistake. She made a big mistake in May and in June. When I say she, because she's fired, Trump fired her, and they say, "Oh my God, Trump is going after the the pillars." Well, yes, he is, but does he have a reason? He has a reason or not? I mean, it's up to you to decide. The reason they made a mistake, they say, is because a lot of people don't answer the surveys anymore. Trump fired a bunch of people from the government, so there's less people doing the surveys. So you had two very significant drop yesterday, or not yesterday, but last week. Two huge modification in terms of the numbers that we're expecting for it. And these were significant changes, I will tell you. These were not minor changes. It wasn't just a little mistake. So, and on top of that, last year, this revision, I will tell you that we're talking about the 73,000 in July, which hasn't been revised yet. Hopefully, doesn't. But the May was revised down by 125,000. And in June by 133,000. That's a lot. It ended up in single digits. And then you see July 73, you say, well, that's not great, but is this real? Um, Now, having said that, employment didn't change that much because we have less people working. But the point I'm trying to make here is that these numbers, it's difficult. These are big numbers. And then last year, there was another huge revision in August, where they released the benchmark revision showing that the economy added 818,000 fewer jobs. And this is what Trump just jumped up. In March, they said there were 818,000 jobs that weren't there. And they found out in August, just in time for the elections. And again, this was this was a significant statistical. The May and June revision were unusually large and statistically significant. When something is statistically significant, it means that it's weird. You could make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes, but this was a big mistake that you made. Now, of course, you could say it's not my fault. It's the fault of the fact that I have less people working for me. It's the fact that people don't want to answer the surveys anymore, which is true. But still, it is statistical significant. There is something else at play here. This 258,000 revision in May and June were the largest 2-month downward revision since 1968. So that's a problem, right? That's a situation that needs to be dealt with and resolved because otherwise. But the point is, in terms of this, as the stock market is concerned, the issue is for you, and this is why I want to tell you about, and it's important for you to understand, is that they are expecting now the rates to drop in August. Why? Because look at the numbers that we have. We have some horrible numbers. And if we had those numbers, if we had seen the real numbers in May and June, maybe we would have a drop, which means you probably have to pay less for things. And the market could have been even higher. So these are huge impact that impacts you all the time. But the thing is, it did not happen. Okay? And now we're expecting it again in May. The only thing is, and this is where you need to be totally informed on a day-to-day basis, is, well, hold on, because now Trump is also having 3 of his people are going to be at the Fed, and they're going to want lower rates. So you're going to have 3 people at least dissenting against 4 from the Biden era. And of course, you're going to have the lower numbers. So if they don't lower rates with these numbers, they're going to say something is up here. Something is going on at the Fed. If they say, well, I need a little more time to see what the implication from the tariffs are. Well, how much time do you want to wait? That's too long. So then the solution is this. We need to simply wait until we see what happens. That's not going to happen. So, well, then let's just lower the rates. So for you, it's going to be great because then the market is going to go up. But be careful, because if that number, that 73 number is real, and the 15 and the 14 are real also from May and June, these are very small numbers, very dismal numbers. Something is going on. And if on top of that, the people overseas are getting hit with those tariffs and they're not able to sell your products to the US and they're getting weakened, then who's going to be buying your products? Unless that's the idea of making America like a fortress and nobody comes in, nobody comes out. But that impacts. Now, of course, these things take time to go through, right, to happen. But then when they happen and they're there, you can't pull back. You can't say, oh, I didn't know. What do I do now? For example, what kind of job should you be having right now? What job for graduate students? Right now, what's happening in terms of jobs, a lot of these students, a lot of people that's starting the career are being let go because of AI. Right? So what should you know? What should you do? Do you know what tariff and how much they were charging us? Yes, I mean, well, India, for example, is only charging 6%. That's not it's charging a lot. Switzerland is, and the devil unfortunately is in the details, right? They're not charging a lot, but Switzerland is charging a lot in terms of agriculture, 29%, but they're not charging on other things. They basically everybody's doing it, quite frankly, right? They because they don't want they want to protect their. That's what Japan did, and I don't know what kind of tariffs. Like for example, Europe. Let's address this question that Scott brought up. You know, what what is the level of tariffs Europe charges on U.S. imports? The thing is, it's not complicated. It's just that you have to know, and it's tough to make decision if you don't know everything. On average, the U.S. EU tariffs on U.S. import is approximately 4%, while U.S. tariffs on EU goods average around 3.4. But that was before. In 2024, the WTO listed average final bound tariffs was 5% across all goods, and of course 10% on agricultural. About 73% of imports from the U.S. Entered the euro at zero tariffs. So overall, it was pretty low, relatively low, especially for industrial products. So Europe is not, you know, but so there is tariffs, and then there is regulation, right? So basically, like you can't import the pork from the U.S. into Europe. That's right. That's right. Key CE marking and product compliance. Many products must meet EU safety standard on the regulation. Product must carry a declaration of conformity, strict chemical regulation, environmental standard, sustainability and human rights, import. So I think what Trump is referring to and Scott too, when he says how much they were charging us, it's not so much they're charging you a lot. What they're doing is they're saying, well, hold on. Products certified in the US often still need to be retested or recertified. The EU is strengthening export controls on dual goods. Imports must be declared using the single administrative document. Corporate sustainability due diligence requires companies to perform due diligence before across supply chain. So it's not so much the tariffs were high for you to bring U.S. goods to Europe. It's just that they have a huge amount of regulation. And Trump brought this up. He says, it's impossible to do business with you. That's the reason why we don't have a Ford 150 in Paris. Yeah, eliminate regulation makes it easier to trade between countries. The thing is, but why not, right? That would be so much easier. So we don't have to deal with all this thing. We just keep it open and everybody does business. The thing is, some countries say, no, well, I'm not that open. I'm not, that's not what I want. Because for the longest time, the U.S. said, "Yeah, let's become the free thing. You come in, you don't charge anything. But how come I can't sell my Ford One F50 into Europe? Well, how come there are no Ford and GM cars in Europe? What can I sell? Well, regulation, environmental standards, strict chemical regulations, lots and lots and lots and lots of regulations. And Trump doesn't have that kind of time. The U.S. doesn't have that kind of time. And frankly, that's the way to do it and move it quickly. Now, are you breaking something that's already broken and that cannot be fixed? Are you protecting your interests? Um, are you protecting your interests much more? Alexandra, tariffs will be low because they are replace a job. Many women degrees. I feel cheaper to have an employed girlfriend who happens to have a couple of degrees. That's true. I mean, what Alexander is bringing up, why don't we have that kind of time? We don't have that kind of time because, well, first of all, Trump doesn't have that kind of time, quite frankly. But also, if you don't do anything very quickly, within 5 to 7 years, you're going to lose the ability to actually catch up in terms of industrial production, chips, potato chips, not potato chips, but um, chips manufacturers, pharmaceutical products. If you don't do anything, you forget how to do them. Right now, you don't even know how to produce rare minerals. So you're running out of time. That's the idea. That's what I mean by running out of time. And AI, unfortunately, as it's coming in, is basically robbing people from their job because there's a lot of stuff that you thought you could do, but AI do it much better. Now you come in, and somebody told me that I'm working with basically said that in the past we used to have this woman coming in, and she would review all the documents, make sure. Now I just fax it into AI. Chat GPT reads it and spits out what's going on, what's not going on, and that's it. So you have to make sure you understand. The idea of this channel really is to understand what's happening, to get a feel for where you are, where it's going, what are the risks, and unfortunately, it's changing all the time. And most importantly, trying to have an open mind and understand, like this guy say, it's all about the interest. Countries do not have, friends or foes. They have interests. Right? If you understand the interests, if you have interest, then you're fine. The only thing is, how long is that going to last? That's a question that we do not know. That is a concern. So we have to keep doing whatever that we're doing in order to avoid a situation with India. Because right now, we'll tell you, India is pretty pissed. Now, as far as the Swiss are concerned, I don't know exactly what she presented. The Swiss president was supposed to present a more attractive tariff offer to White House, but you could imagine the discussion. Um, Basically, they didn't decry, but I think she wanted to give some money, I guess. And I think the administration is starting to realizing that the deals that Trump is making are not real deal in the sense that they're not actually bringing money in. They are promising these are loans, but these are not equity investments per se. You have to be very careful. The Japanese deal is not really what it makes out to be, and the European, but they say, hey, we got our 15%. So that the story now is coming across more and more. I'm sure you heard from the news, and that's what's. And she probably came across. Well, if you want, we could invest 500 billion in the U.S. We could do, and give you a couple of loans or whatever. Say, I don't want loans. I want cash. Well, I don't know if I'll give you cash, and I want you to reduce that 29% tariffs that you have on agricultural. Well, I need to protect my people and all this, and I need to make deal. Well, you know what? You came over. Thank you very much, but that's not enough. I need more. And I need more from you. I need more from Taiwan, which said was no last year. Just keep in mind, okay, how much did Taiwan invest in the U.S. in 2024? Taiwan obviously is largest manufacturer. 15.6 billion total outbound product, excluding the latest cumulative foreign direct investment in the United States stood at approximately 15.6 billion, right? How much does US want now? I think it's 400. I think that's the number I'm thinking. That's the number that I saw. Yep, that's exactly. Trump gave an ultimatum. Okay. Kissing the ring. Yeah, it's time to kiss the ring. Trump ultimatum, I want 400 billion and I want an Intel stake. A recent proposal from President Trump suggests that if Taiwan, especially TSCM, Taiwan Semiconductor, great stock by the way, wants to avoid stiff tariffs, the US expect a massive 400 billion to American industries, coupled with a 49% stake in Intel. By the way, to make my point even clearer, today, and I'll continue on that story. I don't know if you know, you should know this. Today, Trump accused, and you're going to see where I'm going with this. Trump basically accused today he accused Intel of basically he accused the CEO of Intel to be in cahoots with China. Right? That happened very recently. Yep, he accused China. So TSM has declared a $100 billion plan for semiconductor, and separately, as for the idea of a state-backed entity may buy an additional 200. They want the goal is to achieve zero tariff for the U.S. He said, listen, no, this is it. This is it. I want 400 billion. Otherwise, you're on your own with China. He's already investing aggressively in the U.S. while exploring broader trade adjustment. Former negotiations are still ongoing. And basically, the last time around, he did not want him to come and visit him because he was upset. Trump is accusing Intel in China or something. That just came out, and so you could see the point, right? That this is a big issue. President Trump has called for the immediate. Listen to this, and you could understand now what's really going on. Called for the immediate resignation of Intel CEO Lip Bhutan, labeling him highly conflicted. Basically, he's saying he's a traitor, citing Tan's past investment amounting to $100 million in Chinese tech firms, some reported linked to the Chinese military. Trump posted his demand on Truth Social. The move followed concern raised by Senator Cotton in a letter to Intel board about 10 ties to China. Intel. So the reason this is extremely relevant is because Intel is actually the only company in the U.S. that kind of do semiconductors, and they're kind of doing it right with Taiwan. But is this really happening? Is this going to be a thing? It doesn't seem to. And then trying to protect the Chinese. Then this guy is actually working with China. So, at the same time, at a meeting with Apple CEO Tim Cook, Trump announced he would impose a 100% tariff on foreign-made semiconductors, though he exempted the manufacturers in the U.S. I don't have time, frankly. And this is what I meant when I said that Trump is running out of time. And he said, I don't have time to go back and forth. You know what? 100% tariffs. This needs to move a lot faster than it has been. So that is something to be of great concern to us all. And that is something that you need to be concerned and understand, because this doesn't end well. Yep, Trump had a temper tantrum. Well, I mean, he had a temper tantrum because he said, what's going on here? Now, of course, is it true? Is the man truly? I don't know. We shall see. Okay, so let's see what happens next with Switzerland. Grade semiconductor, there are no high, yeah, I know, there's no high grade semiconductor manufacturing. No, because you forgot how to do them. And that needs to happen. That needs to happen again. Otherwise, this is going to be a lot of damage. So on one hand, you're trying to circumvent one group, and then you're fighting another group. That's a problem. Okay, so over the next couple of days, we're going to be following the situation, but more importantly, we're going to be talking about the war game that China is doing right now. Very important. Can a trade war lead to real wars? The hidden cost of the tariffs, Caterpillar, GM, and Levi's are starting to pay. Are we heading towards a stagflation? And more importantly, for those of you in the US, Social Security is running out of money. Will it survive past 2023? And this big thing with the big pharma, and with the AI reshaping the industry. So, my friends, I want to say bid you farewell, and I will see you very, very soon. Don't forget to subscribe and like as usual.